2023 rotation is almost here. It's about 6 weeks away, and I want to go over some of the jankiest cards that we will be losing in this rotation. So, welcome to Jank Play TCG. My name is Landon, and here we play Jank. And so let's jump on over into ptcgl and start going through the cards, shall we? I do not have a list in front of me of the jankiest cards. Really, all I'm going to be doing is scrolling through and being like, hey, you know that card? That's a janky card. I like that card. It's going to disappear. And I think to start this off, we got to look at the Applins here. Now, I've already filtered out the cards, so it is all cards. Even if I don't own them, I'll still show them. But they are from sets: Sword and Shield, Rebel Clash, Darkness Ablaze, Champion's Path, Vivid Voltage, and Shining Fates. Now, there are some cards in Shining Fates that will not be rotating, but I still want to, go through those cards as well. So, let's go ahead and start off with the Applins, like I said. And Appleton. Appleton, I loved when it first came out. Just, you flip a coin, and if heads, switch your opponent's bench Pokemon with one of their active. Benched basic Pokemon. So it had to be basic, but this was in a time where Zacian V and Zamazenta V were pretty big cards, and we still had GXs in the format. So we had a lot of basics that were pretty prominent. Even the tag teams were basic Pokemon. So Appleton was just flip a coin, and if heads, you can switch your opponent's active, which was pretty nice. And along with that, we also had Flapple, which had this amazing ability that once during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and if you placed any damage counters in this way, shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. So, while Galarian Zigzagoon saw more play because it was easier to play, and then you could use Scoop Up Net to reuse it, and it was a basic Pokemon, and it only put down 1 damage counter, although back then, because, like I was mentioning with Appleton, the popularity of basic Pokemon, you could actually go all the way up to Obstagoon, but that we'll talk about that when it comes up. Flapple was a nice different option. However, it never really caught on because it was so much extra work. Applin only having 40 HP, and then you evolve into a very weak Flapple. You do get to shuffle the cards back into your deck, which was fairly nice because it allowed you to reuse it without having to make space for Scoop Up Net. But overall, Scoop Up Net was just a better option than relying on this ability. So, those cards I played around with a lot. They were janky as heck, but, I loved them, but sadly, they just never really made a splash. Arcazult is an excellent janky card. With this Biting Whirlpool ability, whenever your opponent attaches an energy card from their hand to one of their Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. Just getting those extra damage counters was such a big deal, and in a lot of decks, I always tried to make space for some Arcazult to get some free damage pings, because, I mean, if you paid attention to this week's deck, the Greed and Eats deck, I could really use those extra damage counters sometimes, and Arcazult was a great way to do that. Very difficult with it being a fossil evolution, so you have to get the fossil out, which isn't a Pokemon, so you can't search it like a Pokemon. It made it very difficult to get Arcazult out, but there were some fun ways to do that. So that is a janky card I'm definitely going to be missing. Now, this one is way more of a personal card than a lot of these other ones, but Barraskewda, this one in particular, with the single energy attack, 130 damage, discard 2 water energy cards from your hand. If you don't, this attack does nothing, but single energy on a stage 1 doing 130, you can get 2-hit KOs with Barraskewda on a lot of basic Pokemon. Most I want to say most tag teams fell in line with the 160 HP, but even if they went higher, you did have Virtual or Vitality Band in the format to hit 140, so 140 wasn't bad. You could I even threw in Leon when that finally got printed. I threw in Leon for an extra 30 damage. It was a lot of fun, very janky, but I loved it. And of course, one beautiful addition to it was this Barraskewda that for a single energy would do 20 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon for each damage counter on that Pokemon. So you hit them with the Spiral Jet 130, and then they retreat to the bench trying to save themselves, and Targeted Skewer is doing 260. Since that Pokemon already has 130 on it, you're looking at 390, and you are KOing everything. So that was a very janky card connection there that I absolutely loved. Let's see, what else was there? Scrolling. I don't know. Let's see. Butterfree VMAX. I swore by Butterfree VMAX in the beginning. This and another VMAX were like my two favorite VMAXs for a long time. Butterfree doing 150 plus Confusion and Poison meant you were actually doing 160, and again 150 on your next turn plus Poison, so 160, so 320 damage was a good amount of damage back then. It was just difficult to get the energy on to Butterfree. I'm forgetting what set symbol that was. I want to say it was Darkness Ablaze. That was another big issue with the deck, is it came out at a time that everyone was trying out Charizard, and obviously that's not going to work. If you're playing a fire weak deck and everyone's playing a fire Pokemon, it's not going to work. So sadly, it never really got up to speed. But another Butterfree that I'm seeing here, or not even the Butterfree, it's actually the Metapod and Caterpie with the adaptive evolution. I am so going to miss these. Being able to evolve up into a Butterfree in turn 1 going first even is just so phenomenal. Scoop up net, being able to scoop up the whole stage 2 line and play down that whole stage 2 line. That turn, multiple times if necessary, was just so good. And I'm gonna miss that a lot. That led to a lot of jankiness in the fact of it's the best way to get status conditions on your opponent. I believe the Butterfree that you teamed this up with did 3 status conditions, which was phenomenal. Having to get all evolutions was not nearly as bad because Turffield Stadium was still a card. And yeah, I'm going to miss the Butterfree VMAX, the Caterpie and Metapod. All that stuff was just good, and it's all going to be gone, sadly. Let's see, what else is there? Scourge VMAX was not a jank deck at all. It was definitely a popular deck for a lot of people. Let's keep going here. Looking for the jankiness. Trying to focus on the jankiness here. Cinderace, that was a fun deck. I wouldn't call it a janky deck. If you recall the understanding the double switched video that I made, Cinderace was where this really came in. With the counterattack to energy 30 plus however much damage this Pokemon took last turn, not erasing that information, which switches to the bench, healing with the Mallow and Lana and all that stuff. So yeah, not exactly jank, but you know, not bad. Ooh, Whimsicott. There's a couple Whimsicotts here. Flying Fury. Before doing damage, you may discard any number of Pokemon tools from your Pokemon. This attack does 40 more damage for each card you discard. That was a fun deck. I wouldn't really call it janky. Well, it was, because you have to discard tools and it's hard to get tools back and all that stuff. Whimsicott was a lot of fun. I don't remember ever using it myself. But yeah, Vivid Voltage has a lot of good memories for me. Going back to that Barraskewda deck, I always threw in a couple Cramorants, this Cramorant in particular from Vivid Voltage, for 2 double colorless, which really I was playing water energy, so it's 2 attachments. It was actually kind of hard to get going, but whenever I did, it opened up the space for real big hits. Discard any number of Arrokuda cards from your bench. This attack does 60 damage for each Arrokuda you discarded this way. You get all 4 out, you do this big attack doing 240 damage, and then next turn you play Nessa, grab all 4 of them back and put them down again, and hopefully you can just keep that going. Biggest issue is that they'll KO you, and then you are kind of, out of luck. Let's see. We're gonna get rid of Crobat V, which is so sad. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, there hasn't been a higher... Yeah, that's still D. Regulation mark D there. So, Crobat V is going away. That's going to really hurt draw, which is really going to hurt the Jank decks, because Crobat V being a quick ball away and being able to draw up till you have 6 cards is always phenomenal. Not going to be the last we see of it on this channel, but... once rotation hits, we won't see it anymore. So, yeah, that was a fun deck there. Mad Party. So, the Dedenne is the first one out of the Mad Party crew that we ran into, but it's safe to say the entire Mad Party deck archetype was phenomenal. Really captured a lot of people's imagination on what would be possible with a janky deck like that. And I don't feel like Mad Party ever got going well enough to be considered like a top tier deck. It was always a janky deck, always a rogue deck, always a lot of fun, but yeah, never, I don't know. Like, I don't know if my memory is just playing tricks on me, but I never felt like it really took off or anything. Delmise V Max, I don't think that one was the card I'm thinking of. No. Let's see. What else was janky back in the day? I remember someone playing a Dreadnought V Max to a surprising finish, all based off that Solid Shell ability where it reduces damage that you take. Yeah, that was a time, wasn't it? Double. Here we go. Double had a similar ability, but a different attack that in the beginning when, when Welder was still in the format, so you could easily accelerate 2 energy and draw cards and play another energy. Double was just a phenomenal card that a lot of people played. So, excuse me, not a jank deck, but definitely a fun card. Oh, Sky Circus. Any Pokemon with the Bird Keeper interaction there. We are losing Bird Keeper, and we are losing all the Pokemon with the ability, if you play Bird Keeper from your hand during this turn, ignore all energy in this Pokemon's attack cost, which is really sad. That was a phenomenal 0 energy deck that I had a lot of fun playing, even though it wasn't always the easiest thing to control. It was just so much fun. So phenomenal. Sad it's going to be gone so soon. Too soon, in my opinion. Too soon. Let's see. We had... Okay, so back when Inteleon was a big engine, nowadays it seems to have fallen off, but you still see it occasionally. But it got to a point where everyone was playing the Shady Dealings Inteleon, and this Jolteon from Vivid Voltage actually was the cure. It was an Eevee, a Memory Capsule, and a Jolteon, and it just turned off all water Pokemon abilities, which was absolutely hilarious, and a little tragic, but it was a fantastic, janky way to counter the engine of the Pokemon TCG at one point. So, gotta shout out to Jolteon there. Eldegoss, that was an okay card. Manectric, I have to shout this one out just because of that ridiculous Boltund deck that I built, which I did a couple videos on it. I'm thinking one was the how to counter Lugia V-Star, and another one was just playing the deck. It was during the holiday season, so I wanted a week off, so I used a bunch of decks I had already built and, record a bunch of matches. But the Manectric high speed, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, during your turn you may draw 3 cards. That's pretty good Pokemon draw, And also it had free retreat. No retreat cost there, so it was a nice Pokemon to have out onto the field, and it drew you cards, so there was really nothing terrible about it. Fantastic card. Technically a little slow for our format. Drawing 3 cards wasn't nearly that big of a deal. With Scoop Up Net, you could reuse it, but it still wasn't like top tier, where Inteleon definitely was. So Manectric sadly fell to the wayside, but a fantastic janky filled deck. Phalanx is a jank deck, a deck that I absolutely loved. People that played in the Sun and Moon era would know the Pissimian, there we go, Pissimian deck that was very similar to Phalanx, where depending on how many Pissimians you had out on the field, you would do more damage. Phalanx had an even better attack, because Phalanx V counted as a Phalanx for that attack, but then also had a ability where your Phalanx take less damage. Now, Phalanx only had 90 HP, so even with 4 Phalanx out, you're only looking at 170 damage to knock out this single prize Phalanx, which isn't too hard nowadays especially, but back when this came out, it was always on that edge, always on that razor's edge, tipping between, yeah, it's good, nope, something counters it, it kept wiggling there, because Dragapult was so big, and Dragapult, while it hit weakness. That was the major thing. It did get the one-hit KOs because it hit weakness. Even though the 5 damage extra that Dragapult didn't really affect it too much. So let's keep going here. Cursola. Cursola is such an interesting, janky card. So let's start off with just the regular Galarian Cursola. If this Pokemon is in the active spot and is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, flip a coin. If heads, the attacking Pokemon is knocked out. So 50-50 chance whether or not you just get a free knockout from Galarian Cursola being in the active and being KO'd. Could lead into some interesting situations, but it was never powerful enough to really take over. Galarian Cursola V, though, as long as this Pokemon's in the active spot, whenever your opponent attaches an energy card from their hand to one of their Pokemon, put 3 damage counters on that Pokemon. That was a fantastic ability that was very difficult to work around at the time, having to use boss's orders to work around this. And if your opponent, or if you also had Arcazult out, which we talked about before, the 3 damage from Galarian Cursola plus the 2 damage from Arcazult really started to add up, and that was before doing anything else. So Galarian Cursola was a fantastic jank deck as well. Let's keep going here. What else was a jank deck? I think Galarian Meowth deserves a shout out here, because the evolution Roar, an amazing ability. You must discard 2 cards from your hand in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for Galarian Berserker, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck. Obviously, the Galarian Berserker you're going to go for is this one with the Steely Spirit ability, but that's not the janky part. The janky part of Galarian Meowth is that people would play it without having a Berserker in the deck, without using Berserker at all. They just used it to discard cards. Because thinning is winning. Thinning out your deck is winning. So you would want to discard cards from your hand that you're not going to use, then like Marnie or something, to put the cards you are going to use back into your deck and draw new cards. So Galarian Meowth deserves that shout out. It was a phenomenal card. Very janky in its use, though. Let's see. Where is my Galarian Mr. Rhyme? Oh, that one's not rotating. Cool. Yeah, the ball juggling Mr. Rhyme is not rotating. Awesome. Stunfisk. Stunfisk had a short time in the limelight because, let's see. Was it this one? Or was it this one? Nope, I think it was just this one. The Metal Skin ability, where you get plus 20 HP for each metal attached to it. It got to some ridiculous numbers. Just you keep attaching metal energy, and the HP just goes up and up and up. And this was back when GXs were still a thing. Other cards were in the format. It was super easy to get metal energy onto Galarian Stunfisk, and so it just happened a lot. And you were able to get some crazy HP numbers, where like 400 plus. It was insane at the time. But yeah, that was a janky deck. Let's see, we already talked about Galarian Zigzagoon. Galarian Obstagoon, it was this one in particular that was good against basics. Obstruct 90 damage during your opponent's next turn. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from basic Pokemon. It is amazing to me that in such a basic dominated format, Galarian Obstagoon as a stage 2 became such an amazing Pokemon because it prevented all damage done to it by basic Pokemon. And that was phenomenal. And I believe Galarian Obstagoon really is what pushed the meta from just focusing on the tag team Pokemon to starting to include a lot of the VMAXs, because Galarian Obstagoon showed up and you attack once with Obstruct and hopefully you get through, you know, like Escape Rope became a big deal to try to put onto the bench, and then you'd boss it up and try to knock it out with an attack and all that stuff. In addition to all of that, Zigzagoon, Galarian Obstagoon both put damage counters down when you evolved up. And that was such a game changer as well, being able to manipulate the damage in such a way. That is actually a way more meta deck, but had to talk about it because it was so much fun. What else? Ripping Horn. Flip 3 coins for each head to discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Yes, Sea King. That was a fun deck as well. Very disruptive, very control heavy, of just flipping 3 coins and discarding energy from your opponent. We had Glimwood Tangle, maybe not in that set, but in a future set. Might have been that set. We had Glimwood Tangle that would let you reflip, and that was just a fantastic way of anytime your opponent would try to get an edge, you would be able to take that away. And when we had Zacian V as a very popular attacker, requiring 3 metal energy to attack, discarding 2 of them was a huge deal, and that's where Glimwood Tangle really helped out. So Sea King, of all things, was a fantastically janky card. Just want to shout out Glossifer, Call for Family. I think I'm the only one that used it quite that much, but it's a Call for Family attack that gets you 3 basic Pokemon onto your bench. It's still good. It's still a good card. Anytime I'm building a janky deck, I think about Glossifer. And then I also think about Eldegoss that came way later that let you search out basic energy. And that is such a fantastic combination. But, you know, nowadays you don't really attach from your hand too often. It's mostly about like Archeops to attach special energy from the deck, or Mirage Gate to attach basic energy from the deck. It's all about attaching from the deck. Even Regis right now, they're kind of have a resurgence and they attach from the discard. So like no one's attaching from the hand anymore. It's kind of crazy. All these cards that we've talked about, so many of them, the Cursola and the Arcazult, were about attaching from the hand, and that could mess you up. And nowadays it's like, oh, I'm not attaching from my hand. That's easy. Like, I can work around that. So that was fun. That's kind of funny, the way that's all kind of evolved. Rillaboom was a fantastic card. Voltage Beat. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 2 grass energy cards and attach them to one of your Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. Man, it is hard to state how important Rillaboom was. Sadly, in my opinion, we have not had a decent grass, like a meta grass deck, since Tapu Bulu that used a Vikavolt engine. I think it was Guardians Rising, Sun and Moon Guardians Rising. That was like the last great grass deck. And Rillaboom got really close, partnering anything up with Rillaboom, accelerating energy onto the field, 2 energy at a time for each Rillaboom. Phenomenal. But because it's a stage 2, it was so hard to get going, it never really took off. Let's keep scrolling here. This has already taken a... Whoa. This has already taken a lot longer than I was expecting. Knockdown. Knockdown was actually meta. Carry off attack for 3 energy, which at the time you could use a special energy card from the Sun and Moon era that, what was it? I don't know. It just was 3 colorless energy on a evolution Pokemon, but it would be discard at the end of your turn. Carry off, choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. They shuffle that Pokemon and all cards attached into their deck, then shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached into your deck. And it was basically a 1-for-1 where I'm getting rid of my Pokemon, but I'm also getting rid of your Pokemon. And it was just a nice way to kind of clear out any big attackers that your opponent got. Some more jankiness. What was more janky too? Inteleon was actually kind of meta. Not very janky. Mostly looking for the jankiness stuff right now. Just because this is taking a lot longer. Galarian Weezing was always a threat and never serious, sadly. I mean, you would see it pop up from now and then, especially in Eternatus decks, but it never really reached meta, in my opinion. So as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's Pokemon have no abilities except Galarian Weezing. So if it was Galarian Weezing versus Galarian Weezing, basically no one had abilities except Galarian Weezing, which is kind of funny. But it was really the only reliable ability lock in the game for a long time, before Path to the Peak was ever a thing. And even Path to the Peak isn't that great compared to Galarian Weezing. Galarian Weezing is true ability lock in the sense that it takes away all of your opponent's Pokemon's abilities. So Galarian Weezing was phenomenal, but sadly just never really saw too much play there. What else was janky? I know there's a lot. Machamp, I believe, was a janky deck. This attack does 20 damage for each fighting Pokemon in your discard pile. Not really. It just never worked. Machamp just never worked. As a stage 2, it just never worked. Malamar was almost meta. I think it was meta for a while, if I remember correctly. But Maractus, powerful needles, 60 for each energy attached to it. No one cared about this until, what was that Pokemon? Chiram? I think it was Chiram. Came out, and I think that was even battle style, so it wasn't even janky when it came out. It took a year before this became jank filled, but it was amazing because people just used Chiram to just throw down a ridiculous amount of grass energy onto Maractus and then just flip a bunch of coins until you got enough to get the KO. That was a fun deck. Let's see, what else was there? Alcremie, is this the one? No, Cafe Master must have been a later set. Cinccino, oh man, I'm gonna miss Cinccino just because of that 90 HP and all that stuff. The 1 energy retreat cost, the energy assist, which isn't a bad attack, it's just not very powerful. I know there's the new Ralts and Curlia that kind of fill this void, but that has a 2 energy retreat cost, and it's just a lot more awkward. Cinccino, I'm going to miss, sadly. Gonna miss that one a lot. Oh man, Morpeko with the Torment. Every time I read that, I think, oh man, this could lead to something. And it just never does. It lets you pick one of your opponent's Pokemon's attack and just say, you can't use that attack. Here we go. Here's a... what? Oh, wait, is this it? Your opponent shuffles their hand and puts it on the bottom of their deck. If they do put any cards on the bottom of their deck this way, they draw 3 cards. So this was an interesting attack to try to disrupt your opponent. However, because it didn't do any damage, it just never saw any play. I had a friend that really wanted to make this work, but just never could. So, you know, I'm giving that a shout out, you know. I know a lot of people say Orbeetle is janky. I actually played Orbeetle as a janky deck. I think it was actually pretty good when it came out, but it never caught on, sadly. Coming from the Darkness Ablaze era, and the Champion's Path era, with the Charizards, it's hard for any grass Pokemon to really catch on, because they're all weak to frickin' fire. Oranguru is not a jank. That is a seriously good card that we are losing. Let's see, what else? Ooh. More damage for... yeah, this Bisharp was a fun jank deck. Having to have Pawniards on the bench always made Bisharp just not that good until Zoroark came around. Once Zoroark came around and you could get Bisharp out onto the field along with Pawniards, 4 of them on the bench, that was phenomenal. But then they made it even better with a future Bisharp. So it's hard to give that one a shout out when there's a future one that was so much better. Donphan was around in a time that, you know, we really needed something that could do a lot of fighting damage, and Earthquake was it. However, the Strike Back attack was actually better on Phanpy, where you did 30 for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So you would throw a memory capsule onto Donphan that evolved from Phanpy, so you could use Strike Back as a Donphan with 150 HP, so you could have 140 max on your Donphan, and then you could Strike Back doing 3 times that much. Insane. Fun. Barely worked, but such a fun jank deck. Let's see, this Pincurchin is a card I keep revisiting, and sadly, I'm out of time. I can't build a deck with it anymore. But for 2 lightning energy, 30 times for each coin out of the 4 that you flip. If you get heads, it's 30 for each heads. However, if you get at least 2 heads, which probability states, you know, you're basically likely to get at least 2 of them. Not guaranteed though. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. You play that with Glimwood Tangle, and you are getting paralyzation off pretty frequently. But even when you're flipping 4 heads, you're only doing 120 damage, which is not a lot, sadly. And that would have to be 4 heads on coin flips, which isn't likely at all. Yeah, that's not an important one. Let's see. We're losing all the amazing rares, which I would say were janky, but thanks to Archeops, amazing rares actually aren't janky anymore. There were at times where they were janky, though. Let's see. Yeah, there's that Sky Circus attack. Another one. We're losing Decidueye and Sableye V. Both those cards were meta, not janky at all. What's this Rotom? Whenever you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you may search your deck for up to 2 item cards that have the word Rotom in their name. That Rotom, okay, it wasn't good, but I did build a deck that used it, and used it very well. However, just it never really did anything. And the cards that had Rotom in the name just weren't significant enough. Let's see, what else? This video is already going on so long. I don't know if I'll get to trainers. I don't know, maybe I will. Once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from your bench to the active spot, you may attach up to 2 Fire Energy cards from your discard pile to it. This Cinderace was actually, back on PTCGO, my fire deck of choice to complete fire challenges. Not only was it a stage 2, so you had to play a lot of fire Pokemon, so you get evolutions done very easily, but 190 damage was a fair amount of damage. It was actually a lot of damage. Not enough damage to where it became meta, but enough where I could complete the challenge pretty quickly. Discarding 2 fire energy from this Pokemon is not nearly as bad as it sounds because of that ability to accelerate 2 fire energy when you move into the active spot. And with 170 HP, you're not the easiest thing to KO. At least you weren't back then. So that was a fun, janky deck to play as well. Man, I feel like I'm missing some, but I can't figure out which ones. What's this one? Oh, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may de-evolve one of your opponent's benched evolved Pokemon by putting the highest stage evolution card on it into your opponent's hand. That was a fun one. I tried messing with that a lot. It did work, but very rarely, because you'd have to have enough damage on a Pokemon that it would KO the V, but it wouldn't KO the V Max because, you know, V Maxes were almost impossible to one-hit KO. But then you had to put it onto the bench and play down Banette to evolve a Shuppet and de-evolve it, and then you would get a KO, taking 1 fewer prize, but mid-turn KO. And if you didn't get the KO that way, sadly, just next turn they would just play it down again and evolve. Maybe you could Marnie, but then you'd have to hope they don't draw into another one, you know? Here's the Poltegeist that made Mad Party a deck. Because of T-Break, where you discard a Pokemon that has Mad Party attack and draw 2 cards, plus the double colorless Mad Party attack, Poltegeist was phenomenal. Let's keep going here. Greedent, gotta love it. Snorlax VMAX was not a jank. That was actually very meta and very good. Shady Dealings is going to be the biggest loss of the rotation, in my opinion. This engine was so phenomenal for so long. It's the biggest loss because while it wasn't a janky deck itself, it wasn't a janky card itself, it allowed so much more jank to be played. It's insane that we are losing it, but we are. Stonejourner VMAX used to be meta at one point. Altaria. Come on, there's got to be something. Something here. Toxicity. There we go. Poison Shout. That was a deck that I played for so long. For 1 lightning energy on a stage 1, this deck does 20 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. And your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. So do 30 to that one, plus 20 to all the others. Then when Vid Voltage came out and you had the Telescopic Sight, or whatever it's called, you would do 50 to the benched Pokemon V, which is actually way more significant. And that was just a phenomenal card. I absolutely loved that. I know a lot of people liked the Risk Taker attack, where you flip you flip a coin, and depending on the result, what was it? Heads, your opponent discard 5 cards. Tails, you discard 5 cards. And then you mix that with Glimwood Tangle to try to make it land on heads so your opponent would discard more often to try to mill them. Yeah, it never really took off. I was never that big of a fan of it either, but it was a deck that a lot of people tried to make work, but sadly just couldn't. Ooh, yes, the Vanillite, Vanillux line. This one, we gotta talk about. We gotta. So, Vanillite, 1 energy, 10 damage, flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So, paralyzation, we've talked about this. Pretty good stats condition. Vanillish, single water energy, 30 damage, flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Okay, so kind of keeping that paralyzation going. Bitter Cold. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So you have a way to paralyze all the way up to Vanillux, and then Vanillux doesn't have to be evolved or attacking even, just needs to be in the active spot at any moment. You can flip a coin, and then there you go. Done. Job's goodin'. Electrode. Sadly, this never really caught on Electrodes had this ability before in different ways. This is the way that I liked the most. You saw it in the Rotom V-Star deck that I played, and this Electrode was phenomenal in that deck. But sadly, the card never really caught on. So, yeah, it was always like there, and it was never really worth it until recently to use that ability to KO itself and accelerate 2 energy. Woobat. Oh, I actually played this Woobat too. It does 30 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. If you have any cards in hand, this attack does nothing. So you had to attack with an empty hand, and Woobat for a single energy would do 30 to everyone, then throw on the telescopic sight, and then 60 to Pokemon V. And that was just phenomenal. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. What else do we have here that is rotating? That is janky. We've got Zacian V, which is a phenomenal card. Really was top tier when it came out. Although it had to be mixed with ADP at the time, but still a phenomenal card. We had Zamazenta V, and sadly this one, while it's very meta, its ability, it kind of stunted the format for a little while, because at any moment, if you were playing a VMAX and ADP with Zacian V, just needed a 1 of Zamazenta V, and you were kind of stopped in your tracks. You could not do anything if you relied on VMAXs. So Zamazenta actually prevented a lot of VMAXs from seeing a lot of play. Until we got like Boss's Orders and stuff, which I believe was Rebels Clash. I believe I have that timeline straight in my head. This is like 3 years ago. Give me a break. But both very meta cards, not janky at all. Zapdos was actually kind of meta because of the Thunder Snipe attack. Discard all energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 160 to one of your opponent's Pokemon V or Pokemon GX. That was meta because Dedenne GX had 160 HP. Basic Pokemon, let you discard your hand, draw 6 cards. Phenomenal card. Thunder Snipe got the KO, and that's why that saw play. Zarude. Zarude V is one of my favorite Pokemon Vs that I so badly wish would work, and it never did. Jungle Rising, 2 grass energy, 100 damage. Okay, 100 damage isn't bad. You may attach up to 2 basic energy cards from your hand to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. If you attach energy to a Pokemon in this way, heal all damage from that Pokemon. So I used this with Butterfree VMAX to accelerate energy and heal it while doing a decent amount of damage. And it, with Butterfree VMAX being a 3 prizer, Zarude being a 2 prizer, it allowed me to play a 3 knockout game with VMAXs. So that was very interesting. Sadly, because Butterfree had 300 HP, getting hit, trying to heal, and not get hit again to give up 3 prizes was so difficult. Didn't always work, but Zarude was so much fun to play with that attack. You know, we also had the 50 damage, your opponent can't retreat next turn attack. That didn't really do much, but Zarude was very janky, but very fun. I really wish it did lead to a jank deck. So let's see. I don't know, do we have time for trainers? I think we do. Janky trainers is what we're looking for. So like Air Balloon, that is meta 100%, not janky at all, so we won't count that. But Ball Guy was pretty janky. Search your deck for up to 3 different item cards that have the word ball in their name. Can't be Air Balloon, even though it has BALL in the name. But yeah, that card did not really see play until, Level Ball was reprinted. Then we had Pokeball, Great Ball, Level Ball, and then we got Ultra Ball printed later. But we had Evolution Incense at the time, which is why Ball Guy only looked out for ball Pokemon. It was trying to do something. It didn't really succeed, but it was so much fun to play with. Very janky deck. Birdkeeper is another big card that we're losing, sadly. Let's see, what else was janky? Cape of Toughness is not janky. That is a very good card. Curse Shovel was only janky because it only really worked. Like, it worked on any Pokemon, but really only worked on one, and even that one wasn't. Dan, now that's a janky card. That never saw play, though, because it's so janky. You play rock, paper, scissors until someone wins. If you win, draw 2 more cards. So then you would get to draw 4, but you have to win rock, paper, scissors. So it's an interesting thing of playing a game within a game. Gameception, if you will. Let's see, what else? Familiar Bell was janky. A lot of people tried it in Mad Party, and even the V-Union cards tried Familiar Bell. It just lets you search for a Pokemon that's already in your discard pile. So if you have a Mad Party attacker like Dedenne in your discard pile, and you play Familiar Bell, you can search for a Dedenne from your deck. So it was an interesting way for Pokemon search that never really caught on, but someone that played a lot of janky decks, I tried and tried and tried and tried. Glimwood Tangle is another one that led to a lot of janky decks. Oh, it was Darkness Ablaze. Where it just lets you reflip coins, so that would let you kind of manipulate certain attacks to try to hit heads more often, and that was a lot of fun. Always led to jank-filled situations, but sadly, never really made it big time, I think. Heroes Metal. This card is very similar to a card that was in Sun and Moon that basically did the same thing, except this one fixes the issue of you can't KO yourself, where that was a thing in GX era. But I always felt like this card was just, it was good, but yet no one used it. And I still can't figure out why. Why is having 100 HP less on your VMAX, but giving up 1 fewer prize, not phenomenal? And really the only answer is by the time this came out, we had Boss's Orders. So Boss's Orders would let you work around different restrictions. And so having the extra HP when you have a single prizer on your bench was actually a lot more helpful. Lucky Egg. Lucky Egg is a phenomenal card. Pokemon tool card that when you attach, when it's attached and it's attacked, you drop until you have 7 cards. Or when you're knocked out, I believe. When you're knocked out, you drop until you have 7 cards. It's a great way to draw extra cards that you might need. Sadly, it's gone, though. Marnie, powerful card. Such a fantastic shuffle draw. Not really shuffle, but sort of shuffle draw. And gonna be missed. Very much so. Nugget. Okay, I had a Nugget deck. I had a deck that used Oranguru with Nugget. It was actually the Barraskewda deck. It's all coming back to me. It was the Barraskewda deck. I used Nugget because I was using Nessa basically every turn to recover water energy and Pokemon and everything I could. I used Nugget as draw for the deck, and that was phenomenally fun. Not very powerful, but fun. I really wish Nugget could have seen a little bit more play. Could have been a little bit better than it was. Maybe some additional effect where you can play it just to draw 1 card. Maybe would have fixed the card, but sadly no. Or some way to recover it would also be nice. Ordinary Rod, huge card. Let's see. Quick Ball, huge card that we're missing out on. That's just terrible. Rose. Rose was a phenomenal card that saw no play. And I played it with Butterfree. Attach up to 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon VMAX. If you attached any energy cards this way, discard your hand. So obviously it's a high cost to pay, but getting 2 basic energy cards on a 1 Pokemon right after you attached 1 card, getting 3 in 1 turn was phenomenal. Then you mix that with Rose Tower, so you draw until you have 3 cards right after you play Rose. It's great that those two work together so well, but Rose just didn't see a lot of play. A lot of people just did not want to give up their hand. I, on the other hand, let's see, Team Yell Grunt. People didn't like this compared to other rival gang cards in the past, because this one put an energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon into their hand, where the other one discarded it. Discarding it was a lot better than putting it back into the hand at the time. So Team Yell Grunt did not see that much play, sadly. Tool Scrapper, Training Court. Oh my gosh, Training Court. This one hurts me to the core. Training Court is such a phenomenal card. I really wish they would reprint this one, but I don't think they're going to. Just being able to recover one basic energy card. In the game rules, you can attach one basic energy card every turn. And Training Court really made it to where you could. Even when you don't have one in hand, if you had one in the discard pile, just use Training Court, get that one back, and attach it. And it kept things moving in such a way that I'm really sad that we're going to be missing out on it. Man, I am just spewing information right now. Turbo Patch, phenomenal card. Saw a bit of play in the beginning, but really fell off hard after a while. Turffield Stadium, if grass decks could be good, Turffield Stadium would have been why. But sadly, they just couldn't get good. Vitality Band was good. Yellhorn, if you're a fan of this channel, you know I love Yellhorn. And sadly, we are losing that. So let's go ahead, go to energy. Here is the energy that we're going to be losing. Really, a lot of standouts here are going to be affecting Lugia V-Star. Aurora Energy, Capture Energy, Powerful Colors Energy. Not so much Twin Energy, but you know what I mean. We're going to lose out on mostly Powerful Colors Energy is the one that's going to affect Lugia V-Star the most, because it won't be able to hit that much more damage. So that one's going to affect it most. But everyone is losing out on one of their special energies. Stone Fighting Energy, so your fighting energy take less damage. Speed Lightning Energy, so you can draw more cards. Even Reggie is going to miss out on this one, as well as Aurora Energy. I can't remember if Scarlet and Violet have an Aurora Energy replacement or not. Let's see. Hiding Darkness Energy that gave your Darkness Pokemon free retreat has been phenomenal, but we're going to lose it. Horror Psychic Energy, another phenomenal energy that we're just not going to have anymore, where it puts 2 damage counters on any attacking Pokemon. Fantastic. Twin Energy, losing out on Twin Energy. I'm really hoping we get Double Colorless back. I think Twin Energy was phenomenal, but I really hope with the format that we are going into, Double Colorless comes back, and I think it will. I think they've already shown that Scarlet and Violet is going to be redoing a lot of what made the Sun and Moon era so much fun. And that's really it. I mean, we've gone through Pokemon, we've gone through trainers, we've gone through energy. This is almost an hour long. I've been talking this entire time. I'm going to go get some water. But really quickly, I want to say this, from basically today till Scarlet and Violet come out, I'm going to be revisiting all of these sets that are rotating, starting with Sword and Shield. Going to be playing a deck tomorrow. I'm going to show it off at least. That is based around Zacian V and Zamazenta V, because they were the standout cards of the Sword and Shield era. And I'm just going to go through, or not era, but set. Sword and Shield set. And I'm going to go through each set that is rotating and pick a deck that I think really defined that format or that set, and build a deck around it for today, to use today, trying to use as much of that set as I can, but really trying to build a deck for today from that set. Does that make any sense? I'm going to be playing Zacian V, Zamazenta V in a Sword and Shield deck, but I'm not limiting myself to just Sword and Shield cards. There's other cards, you know, that were printed later on that will also be in the deck. But there's going to be a lot from Sword and Shield. And so I'm going to do that each week. So the following week will be Robo Clash. The week after that will be Darkness Blaze. The week after that will be a difficult one because it will be Champion's Path, and then Vivid Voltage, and then Shining Fates, which I know not everything in Shining Fates is rotating, but I want to look at the D cards that are rotating, and I might just play something that's an E card anyways. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far in deck building. But I really want to get inside and use the restroom. Too much information, I know. But thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if you enjoy what I do here. Once we hit 100 subscribers, we will have a Discord channel for people to go and talk and stuff about Jank decks. And what else is there? I don't think there is anything else. So all I'm going to say is thank you so much for watching. And until next time, keep playing Jank.